Welcome, one and all in one, to the Mana Vault podcast. This is episode number 2. We're going to crack open our mental vaults on our thoughts on the game of Magic the Gathering. My name is JC Everhart. I'm one of your hosts, and I'm joined, as always, by Arven Hormez, my co-host.
Hey, how's everyone doing tonight?
Arven, where can people find us?
So, you're watching us on YouTube, so thank you for showing up. And you can please hit that subscribe button, leave us a comment. Also, hit that like and that bell notification to know whenever we post something new. And if you want us to reach us on other social media, we do have Twitter and an Instagram. They're both under vault_mana. Leave a comment, see what you like.
Be sure to use the hashtag GameBaeTae, GameBaetae. That'll get our attention.
Oh, it definitely will.
So let's get into our opening segment, Planeswalker's Favor, where one of us talks about a card we really enjoy in Magic and where we enjoy playing it. Up today is Arven. Arven, what do you got for us?
So this is one of those cards that's slightly new, but not really. It is Ursa Lord High Artificer.
Oh boy.
He is a legendary creature. He costs 4 mana, 2 blue, 2 generic, and when he enters the battlefield, he makes a construct, which is its power and toughness is equal to the number of artifacts you control. And he has a couple more abilities. The one most people, I guess, associate him with, because he becomes really powerful with this ability, is he turns all of your artifacts into Mox Sapphires, which then means they can tap, add 1 blue to your mana pool. His other abilities, you pay 5, you look the top card of your library, you shuffle your library, then you reveal it, and you may cast it for free. But it's turning all of your artifacts into Mox Sapphires, which makes them really, really busted. And right now there's a really powerful deck in Modern, which is Ursa, or just Ursa with a billion different names for it. But basically the combo is with Sword of the Meek and
Thopter Foundry.
Yeah. Just make infinite Thopters, infinite life.
The idea is that Sword of the Meek, when a 1/1 creature enters the battlefield under your control, you get to return Sword of the Meek from your graveyard to the battlefield attached to that creature. And Thopter Foundry lets you sacrifice a non-token artifact to make a 1/1 Thopter with flying and gain a life. So Ursa lets you tap both the sword and the Thopter to make blue mana. You use 1 of the blue to sacrifice the sword, and you loop this continuously to get infinite Thopters and infinite life and infinite blue mana, and you can start casting things from the top of your library to lock your opponent out of the game with things like Spine of Ishtar.
There's a million other ways you can have, but like the most combo-ish card that I really like is Spine of Ishtar, because making your opponent not play Magic anymore seems like a pretty good way to start.
Yeah, normally a 7 mana artifact is kind of expensive to play, but when you have infinite mana, playing it cheap again and then sacrificing it to the Thopter Foundry, and it has a triggered ability that returns it to your hand whenever it's put into a graveyard from play, so you just get to repeat destroy all of your opponent's permanents with its enter the battlefield ability.
So here's the one thing with Ursa. Every time people look at it, they're like, wow, the card's dumb, which it is. It's very, very powerful. It's gonna see play in every format it's legal in. Right now, it's a really good deck in Modern. Some people have been talking about where it's gonna go. In Commander, it's a CEDH card level. It's seen like fringe play in Legacy. Vintage, I'm gonna be honest, I'm not too versed with it, but I've also seen it on some random decks pop up, which it's a very powerful card. Vintage has a lot of artifacts. You have your power 9, and just makes all of your stuff cost
absolutely
really, really powerful.
Really strong.
So the one other thing with Ursa, people don't look at it. People just look at the ability where you tap your artifacts to make mana. I actually want to use the other ability where you pay 5, shuffle, which makes it kind of an interesting card. If you're in Commander, you're only in mono blue, so your options are, I don't want to say limited on your top end, but it is. But you still have cards like Omniscience, you have like cards like Enter the Infinite, which are all combo pieces. But you also have like Jin Gitaxis, you have all the Sphinxes, which make them really, really powerful.
You can either shuffle your way to large threats that will attack your opponent or lock your opponent out of the game, or you can shuffle your deck and eventually find cards that will draw you a lot of cards and let you start playing those with the many blue mana you make, or combo pieces that interact with each other on the battlefield to start winning you the game that way.
So, I don't know what it is, but whenever they spoiled it, if you know Magic lore, you know Ursa was one of the most powerful
absolutely
beings. When they printed Yawgmoth, it was kind of like one of those cards where it's like, I like it, and then Ursa showed up, and we're like, wow,
It certainly lives up to the power level we would expect of a character of that kind of fame within the Magic lore. That's for sure.
They have printed an Ursa Planeswalker, but as a joke, I don't think they ever will.
Yeah, it was silver bordered, so.
Yeah, it was in an unset, I believe.
Yeah, it was an unstable, and you got a random ability of a different Planeswalker from Magic's history, but this card absolutely lives up to the Legend of Urza and does him some justice.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Obviously, it's seeing a lot of play across multiple formats. So.
Oh, yeah. And if they ever printed an Urza Planeswalker, which I don't ever see them doing, I think it would have to be the most powerful Planeswalker in the game because...
Probably.
Outside of Jace, which that's who they've focused on the last, I don't know how many years, Urza's like the next most iconic, like, blue character.
Yep.
So it would have to be extremely powerful or just never print it, which I kind of like never printing.
I think we're leaning in that direction, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into our main topic today. So we're going to play a little game, and what we're going to do is we're going to look at cards on the banned and restricted list or in different formats where we're going to say if you were forced to take one card off of the banned and restricted list or add a card to it in each of these formats, which card would it be? So we're going to cover Standard, Modern, Legacy, and Commander. These are formats we're relatively familiar with to very familiar with. Formats that we've played quite a bit of.
Right, and no offense to the other formats, but these are just the most popular one and the ones that most Wizards advertising the most. Pauper as well, but Pauper's still relatively a new format that Wizards has officially recognized.
Yep.
So we're going to gloss over it for the time being. And the same thing with Vintage. It's just not as popular as the others.
Absolutely. If this is a segment you'd like, then let us know and maybe we'll do it again sometime.
Oh, yeah.
So let's start with Standard. And Arven, why don't you go first? Which card did you pick for Standard?
So here's the thing. We just got Throne of Eldraine. Pre-release was last weekend, and this upcoming weekend will be the release of the set. So we have the card I believe should be banned, or maybe there should be a discussion about it because new cards are coming in, is Teferi Time Raveler. It's a 3-mana Planeswalker. It's a Azorius, 1 blue, 1 white, and 1 generic. 3 mana, 3 loyalty Planeswalker. No, actually, my apologies. It's a 4 loyalty Planeswalker, and it has a
4 loyalty Planeswalker.
Static ability is your opponents cannot play spells during... Well, they have to play at sorcery speed. And his plus ability is you may cast a sorcery spell as though it had flash, or otherwise you can cast it at instant speed until your next turn.
Correct.
And his minus 3, I believe, is return an artifact, a creature, or an enchantment to its owner's hand.
And draw a card.
And draw a card, which is... The card is... You can understand why it's really, really dumb. Making your opponent play at sorcery speed so their counter spells don't work.
Yeah.
If they want to have, like, reaction to your creatures or you going into combat, it's just... It's not a very fun card to play with. It's not that his 2 abilities that are overpowered. It's the static ability on a 3-mana Planeswalker.
Absolutely. This is also a card that's seeing significant play in Standard and in Modern.
Yeah.
And sees a little bit of play in Eternal formats as well. I know I've seen it in Commander and...
I've seen it in Legacy pop up a few times in, like, Miracles and whatnot. But it's just... The card is a little powerful. Don't get me wrong. It's... You can interact with it. It's just, when it comes down... It makes your life difficult. It makes all of your instants, the cards that you play because they have their instant speed, kind of useless. Like, if you go back and, like, Legacy, your Force of Wills, they do nothing. Your counterspell, they do nothing.
It definitely makes Standard control mirrors very one-sided because I can play counterspells, you cannot, and that makes it a lot easier for me to get ahead on tempo and resources and that sort of thing when... I'm able to answer with things like Dovin's Veto and Absorb, and you're not.
So the one other thing is, I just kind of want to touch up on, is having a Teferi is amazing. Having your opponent having Teferi is not so much. When you both have Teferis, this is the part where it's just... There's no interaction. Well, there is, it's just at sorcery speed, and no one's really having fun. It's not a very fun card. That's just my opinion, though, so... And
the static ability... much like the static ability of the next card we're going to talk about, is something that's somewhat easy to forget, and that can lead to some misplays and some boards, some interactions and things that make it difficult, and you have to rewind with a judge and that sort of thing. And that just makes it a little more annoying to play with.
I've had multiple judge calls where my opponent's gotten warnings. It just doesn't feel good, but you can't continue the game if, someone's made the mistake like that.
That's definitely true.
But anyways, JC, what is your card to be banned in Standard?
So we're talking about 3-mana Planeswalkers in Standard, and we're talking about Planeswalkers from War of the Spark with static abilities. The card I want to bring up is Narset, Parter of Veils. This is another Planeswalker that's really annoying, and a static ability that is very difficult to deal with. So Narset is 1 and 2 blue for a 5 loyalty Planeswalker. She has a static ability that says your opponents can only draw 1 card each turn. And she has a -2, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a non-creature, non-land from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Very similar to Azcanta the Sunken Ruin.
Yeah.
And what makes this card so obnoxious is the static ability in particular, because it's very easy to forget that you can't draw more than 1 card each turn. This is not an effect that's super common. There's maybe 3 or 4 cards in Magic that have done this effect. And drawing cards is something that a lot of decks like to do to continue playing the game. And when you can't do that, it makes really slows you down.
Right. And kind of with the same thing, if you have Narset and Teferi, now you can only draw 1 card ever, because the way to get around it is if you have an instant speed spell that draws you a couple cards, it will draw you 1 card on your opponent's turn, because it is the first card you've drawn that turn, because it's on your opponent's turn. But with Teferi in play as well, it makes it really, really difficult to continue the game.
And these are 2 cards that want to go in the same deck in very blue-white blue-white X control decks. And just kind of setting up a board state that says my opponent can't draw extra cards, can't play spells at instant speed, kind of has to sit there and watch me play Magic. And it's a slow strategy, so they have to sit there for a long time. Makes it kind of difficult.
And it's kind of the same thing with Teferi, where it makes for awkward judge calls where they've drawn multiple cards, they have to go back. It just makes the game, it's not, I don't want to say not interactable, but it makes the game really difficult, where if your opponent can't draw cards and you're in a control deck, so you're going to be drawing lots of cards, and it's just, it's not a very fun game. And it's kind of also the same thing. If it's on the other side as well, it's horrible, it's miserable, it's just not a fun game.
Absolutely true. All right, let's talk about Modern. Now, this is a format where we get some really fun cards that we wanted to bring back.
Yes. Okay.
So I'm going to let you go first again.
So here's the thing. Modern is a very diverse format. There's a lot of cards throughout Magic history. The card I want to see back, in its day, it was very powerful, I will admit. But now, I don't think so, with all these new decks running around. But the card is called Birthing Pod. It is a 4-mana artifact. It is 1 Phyrexian green, I believe, or is it black? It is green. It's green. And 3 generic. Phyrexian mana is you can either pay the green or you can pay 2 life. The card only costs 3 mana. No one ever pays the green, unless you're desperate on life. And it has an activated ability. It's, I believe, a Phyrexian mana and 1 of color. The Phyrexian is green. So again, it's usually just 1 mana. Sacrifice a creature, search your library for a creature with converted mana cost 1 plus your creature you sacrificed. So essentially, it just fits into a toolbox deck. Back when it was in Modern, it was just more powerful because all the decks were more mid-rangey, so you can find your toolbox cards where you can just kind of shut down your opponent. But now we have decks like Urza running around. We have a bunch of different things that are just in the format that kind of make it a little bit faster.
And with the unbanning of Stoneforge Mystic, it seems like Wizards wants to move Modern in a more mid-range, creature-focused direction. And they've said in their most recent Banned and Restricted announcement, they want Modern to go more into a battlefield-focused sort of state and a battlefield-focused interaction meta of Modern. And Birthing Pod, I think, fits really well into that. The danger in Birthing Pod is that it provides a significant amount of consistency where you build your deck in a certain way where I'm going to play 1 drops and 2 drops early. I'm going to play
birthing pod.
I'm going to play the birthing pod when I have 4 mana, so I'll spend 3 and pay 2 life to play the birthing pod, pay 1 and pay 2 life to tap it, sacrifice one of my creatures, go get
Something.
if I sacrifice a 2-drop, I go get a 3-drop, maybe an Eternal Witness to get that 2-drop back.
And then to keep the loop going.
Yeah.
It's a very powerful deck. Like, kind of touching up on what you said, they want it to be on battlefield focus because previous Modern was, well, heavily graveyard focused.
Yep.
There was a card that was in Modern. I don't even want to mention it. That was just... It made the format...
fair.
Yeah. It made the format very, very, well, degenerate. It made it unfun.
It was very combo-centric.
Yeah.
We're moving away from that now.
Now, if we bring it back, I don't think it'd be the worst thing in the world. I honestly think it'd be healthy for the format.
I could definitely see that.
So, now, JC, what about you? What do you want to be banned or unbanned in Modern?
I love playing a variety of different decks in Modern, and one that I enjoy playing but I wish had a little more power to it is blue-white control. And blue-white control is starting to see a lot more play now, but that's because it's starting to integrate Stoneforge Mystic and some more mid-range style cards into it. One of the complaints I've had for a while about Modern is that blue has the weakest low-cost card draw spells, so they're cantrips. And by that I mean blue has Serum Visions.
And Opt, but
so it's single blue, either scry 1 and draw a card at instant speed for Opt, or draw a card and then scry 2 for Serum Visions. But
it's not
red
good.
Had Faithless Looting for the longest time until very recently, which was draw 2, discard 2 at sorcery speed for a single mana, and it had flashback.
And in red, that's very, very powerful. You just want to put cards in your graveyard.
Red doesn't have cards like that anymore.
No.
And green has
Ancient Stirrings, which is usually seen played in Tron, but it's a single card that digs 5 deep.
Yeah, you look at the top 5 cards. It's single green sorcery. Look at the top 5 cards. Reveal a colorless card from among them, which can include lands.
Yep, lands are colorless.
Artifacts, Eldrazi, and put it in your hand. Put the rest in the bottom in any order. The fact that blue has the weakest cantrip really doesn't make any sense because blue is the card draw color. So I would love to see a better blue cantrip get unbanned, and I think the safest... The 2 blue cantrips that are banned in Modern are Ponder and Preordain, but I think Preordain is the safer one to unban, which is single blue for a sorcery, scry 2, then draw a card.
So instead of with Serum Visions, you get to first draw a card, then scry 2, it's just reversed. It makes it for... You get to see more information, which makes sense. Blue is all about searching for knowledge.
Yep.
And... The other cards, I think Ponder is a little powerful. Brainstorm cannot be in the format.
No.
That is way too powerful.
Draw 3 and put 2 back on top of your library at instant speed is just a little too much. And we do have Jace the Mind Sculptor in the format, which does that as an ability. But Jace is a 4-drop, so you're not doing that on turn 1s and 2 and 3.
In Modern, if you played a 4-drop and did nothing else, like if you played Jace on 4 and did nothing else, you're probably going to lose that game, unless you're just very, very far ahead.
Correct.
But other than that, I do agree with having Preordain in Standard, in Modern, because it's a very, very powerful card that blue needs. It really, really does.
I think blue just needs a little bit of a boost, and giving it a better cantrip, giving it the opportunity to have the best cantrip in Modern would be a healthy thing for blue, I believe. And also, there are decks that wouldn't play Preordain even if it was legal in the format.
Course.
Decks that play Terminus and other miracle cards that have a cheaper cost if it's the first card you draw for the turn would probably play Serum Visions instead, so you can set those cards up for later with the scry afterwards rather than scrying during your turn. And
but it is kind of sad that how blue doesn't really have very good draw spells. The best one you could really think of is Ancestral Visions, I believe. Is that the suspend one? You suspend it after 4 turns, you draw 3 cards, so it becomes Recall, but in 4 turns, it's don't get me wrong, it is very powerful, but after 4 turns, you refill your hand. You usually want that information immediately.
If you're not suspending it on one of the first 2 turns, it's probably a little late to get it on turn 7, turn 8, especially against certain matchups.
In Modern, that is way too slow.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to Legacy. So I think I'll go first this time.
Okay.
So the card I would love to see unbanned in Legacy is a very powerful enchantment called Oath of Druids.
Okay.
Single green and 1 other for an enchantment that says, at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player may choose an opponent who controls more creatures than him or her. If you do, you may reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card. Put that card into play, and the rest of these cards into your graveyard.
Yeah.
So, Oath of Druids is a deck in Vintage, and it's a very powerful one, but the reason it's powerful in Vintage is the access to other very powerful cards that you can play in Vintage that you cannot play in Legacy. And I'm talking about things like Mental Misstep, and
you have a bunch of you have the Power 9 to start
you
with.
can play with Power 9, so you can accelerate your Oath of Druids out on turn 1 by playing a land and then playing one of the Moxen. 0 mana artifacts that tap for a mana. Basically, just doing things so much faster there. The thing is that the strategies in Legacy that care about your graveyard, like Reanimator, they're not top tier strategies right now.
Not even close. Like, with the card, usually what you do with Vintage is you put, like, Emrakul or Grizzlebrand into play. But if you have no way of giving any of those haste, sure, with Grizzlebrand, it's extremely powerful. You pay 7, draw 7, more information. But at the same time, in Legacy, in Vintage, people do play with, like, Swords and Path. But in Legacy, those cards are more prevalent. You see them more in different decks. So if they're putting Emrakul into play, then they got lucky. You're going to lose the game because that card is very, very hard to remove. But with Grizzlebrand, they draw some cards. They're getting to a low life total, and Vintage is Legacy is a pretty fast format. So if you're playing against an aggressive deck, you're most likely dead if you just drew 7 cards and they like killed your Grizzlebrand.
Exactly.
I think it's a fine card to put in Legacy. I really do.
Yeah, considering that decks like Sneak and Show and that sort of thing exist that already put cards like Grizzlebrand and Emrakul into play, and those decks exist without any trouble in the format, without being a problem, I don't think that Oath of Druids would be that much more of a problem, and I think it would add an interesting take on the sort of Reanimator strategy or the cheat a large creature into play strategy that would be a little different and force you to play green instead of just red, black, blue. Or
it's usually like red, black, like you said. It's usually like show and tell. I'm going to put Omniscience or Emrakul or something really big dumb into play, or Sneak Attack, and then just sneaky Emrakul. So the one card I want to see banned, or excuse me, unbanned, is Mind Twist. I'm a big fan of this card. The thing is, I don't think it's game warping. So Mind Twist is a single black and X. You pay as much as you want to the X, and then target opponent discards X cards at random. So my reasoning is Legacy's gotten to the point where I don't think if your opponent, let's just say on like turn 4, spends his entire turn 4 trying to make you discard some cards, I think he's about to lose the game at that point. You don't really care if most decks in Legacy usually just put their stuff into play. And if you're like a combo deck or something, you're holding on to like counter magic. So the decks that would probably want it would be like Stoneblade or stuff like that are like mid-rangey fair decks. But even then, it just doesn't seem like it's a fine card. It's just Hymn to Torok already exists in the format. I would rather just play that because it's just
it's 2 mana for 2 cards as opposed to 3 mana for 2 cards.
So this card, I don't think there's a reason for it to be on the ban list. I'm sure someone will try to find some way to make it broken, but Legacy, I think, is a diverse format where we'll be fine. I don't think it would be that big of a deal because, like you said, 2 mana to discard 2 cards is better than 3. And it's pretty much kind of like that whole argument. People are not playing with Hymn to Torok that much, so I don't see Mind Twist being really that big of a deal. I really don't.
The mana acceleration in Legacy is a lot slower than in Vintage. We don't have access to the Mox, and we don't have access to Black Lotus, Soul Ring, Mana Crypt, that kind of thing. You can't get 5 or 6 mana on turn 1 and just make your opponent discard almost their entire hand, which is something that can happen in Vintage. Here you have to wait till turn 3 or turn 4 to make them discard 2, 3, 4 cards.
You have cards like City of Traders, then Ancient Tomb, but that's on turn 2. You're making them discard 2 cards. It's kind of like the whole argument with like you have Hymn to Torok. You don't even need 2 life or lose a land with City of Traders. It's kind of one of those cards. I don't think it needs to be on the ban list anymore. I think it's fine to be put in the format, and I think it will just be. I kind of want to see how the format would go after we put that card in.
Awesome. So we're going to move on to our last format, which is Commander. Arven, what card did you pick for Commander?
Mine is Gifts Ungiven. I kind of like the card. It's a little strange. I played with it with Modern a couple times.
I'm a big fan.
Yeah, it's usually in like combo decks. So Gifts Ungiven is an instant, 4-mana instant, 1 blue, 3 generic, and it reads: you search your library for four cards with different names. An opponent chooses 2 of them that go into your hand, and the other 2 go into your graveyard. So it's usually played in combo decks. In Modern, it's usually in Storm. I've never really been a big fan of it in Storm, mostly because I'm a terrible pilot for Storm, but that's
fair. That's fair.
That's a whole other conversation. In Commander, it's just, you're a singleton, so every single card you're going to grab is going to be different.
Yep. The reason this card got banned in Commander is that it says up to 4 cards. So you can choose to simply grab 2 cards, and because your opponent is forced to put the 2 of the cards into your graveyard, they will put the 2 cards you chose in your graveyard. And where you see this most commonly is, I'm going to grab Unburial Rites, which is a flashback reanimation spell, and some very large and powerful creature. And you're doing this on turn 3 or turn 4 on your opponent's end step. You untap your lands, you play Unburial Rites, and you put this thing into play on turn 4 or turn 5 well before it should have come out.
But we have other strategies that just do the same thing, where you have cards like Reanimate or Animate Dead. Filling your graveyard in Commander is not hard at all. There's a million cards that do the same thing. It's also, like, you can try to build your deck around just a singular card, the Gifts Ungiven, or you can build your entire deck around Reanimator, which you'll have, well, much better luck with that. And in Commander, you don't have cards like Emrakul, which can't go to the graveyard anyways, or Griselbrand, which is usually, like, the big things you want, because Griselbrand lets you draw more cards, keep going. The biggest thing you could grab is like Jin Gitaxias that will draw you cards.
Elesh Norn to kill your opponent's creatures. Elesh Norn gives all your opponent's creatures -2/-2.
Vorinclex maybe.
Sure. But there's some pretty powerful enter the battlefield triggers you could get with something like a Woodfall Primus to blow up non-creature permanents. But at the end of the day, it's something we can already do in Commander.
Yeah, and at usually the same rate of speed.
Yeah. The other place this would be a little unfair is a deck that would cast other kinds of cards from your graveyard, something like Cast that lets you cast an instant or sorcery from your graveyard. But again, it's a deck that can already put cards into the graveyard, can already cast them from the graveyard. So giving it another tool that does that, not going to change the consistency of the deck all that much.
Really.
And not really going to threaten the format all that much.
I don't think so, because don't get me wrong, the card is very, very powerful. It's just in a singleton, it makes it a little less powerful.
Exactly.
And where all the big heavy hitters are.
You're not playing 4 of these things. You're playing 1.
No. What about you? What do you got for Commander?
All right. So the card I think should be unbanned in Commander is an enchantment called Recurring Nightmare.
Interesting.
It's a 2 and a black enchantment, and it has an ability: sacrifice a creature and return Recurring Nightmare to your hand to return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, but activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. The reason that it got banned is that producing tokens is very, very easy, and the ability to continuously recur creatures from your own graveyard for a 3-mana and sack a token investment is not very expensive, and it's quite effective.
Yeah.
The thing is that you cannot do this in response to anything. You cannot... You have to make a 3-mana investment for each of these things, so you're not going to get 3 creatures on turn 3.
Also, it's one of those cards that's kind of the same thing. We can already do just about the same rate of speed. I've never actually played with this card, so I don't know how, like, I know how the card works. I just don't know how good it was at the time in Commander, so I can't really give you, like, a valid opinion on it. But the card also, we have cards that do the exact same thing that are, well, not the exact same thing, but something similar that exactly the same speed, if not faster. It's kind of like earlier on, we have, like, Reanimate, Animate Dead that are...
The other thing, too, is that we've gotten a lot of cards into Commander in the past few years that really enable Reanimator strategies, and those cards would love to work together with Recurring Nightmare, but a lot of them are just better overall in quality than Recurring Nightmare. And I'm thinking of things like Liliana Death's Majesty from Amonkhet that
Just reanimates.
It just puts a creature card from your graveyard into play as a Planeswalker and then starts milling you and making zombies with its plus ability. Marin of Clan Neltoth is an extremely powerful Golgari commander that either brings a card back to your hand or to the battlefield on your end step, depending on the number of experience counters you have. We've gotten so much Reanimator help over the past few years, and Recurring Nightmare is not going to break the format by any means. It's a powerful card, and it's just like Gifts Ungiven. It's something you would have to watch after you unband it. But I think it's something that would make Reanimator a lot of fun and give it an interesting tool to work with.
So it's kind of like earlier, I don't remember what the card is, but I don't remember what the card's name. It's a single black. When it enters the battlefield, you mill yourself for 3. When it dies, you also mill yourself for 3.
Stitcher's Supplier.
That card is very good. We've also gotten that, so that works with it. But again, we're in a singleton format. So by the time you find your combo pieces, of course, there's days where you just draw it naturally and you just have it. That happens. But by the time you find it, by the time you go off, there's cards that do the same thing that are just as fast. It
requires the same amount of work as any other Reanimator card. It just allows you to be a little more... You get to do it over and over again over a period of time, and that, I think, is a benefit more for those strategies than a hindrance to the rest of the format.
Yeah, of course.
All right, well, we're going to move into our closing segment, News or Brews. And we're just going to have a little bit of a recap of what happened this past weekend at Throne of Eldraine pre-release.
Ooh, it was an interesting
fun set.
Oh, it's very, very interesting. So, JC, do you want to start us off here?
Yeah, one of the cards I was most impressed with was a little 1/1 artifact creature called Gingerbrute. 1/1 for 1 with haste, and you can pay 1 to make it unblockable except by creatures with haste. And you can pay 2 and sacrifice it to gain 3 life because it is a food.
It is still a food. So the one thing I really like about this set, Wizards, flavor, you nailed it.
Absolutely.
You did an amazing job.
All the fairy tales are in there.
Oh, yeah, the fairy tales, the folklore, all the weird things that we've all made up in the past have just kind of like come back with a weird twist to them. That was kind of cool. So the one card I'm actually really, really excited for is Once Upon a Time. Once Upon a Time... Wizards did it again. It's a free spell because free spells are fair in Magic.
If it's the first card you've cast this game, it's for free.
Because that's apparently how that works.
What does it cost normally, though?
So normally it's a single green and 1 generic. It also is instant speed. So even if your opponent's going first, you can say, stop on your upkeep. I have not casted any spell. Cast it for free. But going on with it, it's look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a land or a creature card and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order.
Yep.
So the card's dumb. It's for if you started off, say, for example, you have 2 of them in your opening hand. You go forest, something, pass. Forest, and then you're going to go, all right, I'm going to cast it now for free, and then cast the second one for its actual mana cost.
Find a creature in a land, find 2 more lands.
And then it continues on with combos. For standard, it's going to really help shape out decks. In modern, it fits immediately into Tron because you already have a card that pretty much does something just about the same thing.
Yep.
And I don't know. I want to see what the card is going to do. It's a very, very interesting card. Also, the flavors. Mwah.
Yeah, absolutely. What was your favorite card to play with in Limited?
Mine, I don't know if I had a favorite card, but the one card I like was Bacon to a Pie. It was funny. It was a 2 black, 2 generic instant. It's destroy target creature, and you get a food token, which is a little artifact that doesn't really do anything except you can pay 2, tap it, sacrifice it, you gain 3 life.
Yep.
It's just the flavor and the way there's bacon to a pie. I don't know.
It's just a funny card.
It really, really was. So, what was the most powerful card you played with, though, in like a limited or a sealed format, or like?
I got to play with a lot of powerful cards this weekend, so it's hard to pick. I think the one that I was the most impressed with how consistently it won me games was Clackenbridge Troll.
That curse.
3 and 2 black for an 8/8 with trample and haste. When it enters the battlefield, target opponent gets 3 0/1 white goat creature tokens. At the beginning of combat on your turn, any opponent can sacrifice a creature. If they do, you tap the troll, but you gain 3 life and draw a card. What's great about this is that your opponent is giving you an advantage in some way because either you have an 8/8 with trample and haste that will kill them, or they're undoing the damage that they've done to you and letting you draw extra cards. Eventually, they're going to run out of creatures, and that troll is going to get in there. But at the same time, if they've let you draw 3 or 4 extra cards, you've
really,
also
really
been able to find more threats and find more answers for their threats and put those into play.
So the one thing I actually kind of like about that card, it has weird keywords for a black card. Haste and Trample are... Well, Trample is fine for like some of the
Somewhat
larger creatures, but
Haste is a little weird. Yeah.
It's usually seen on, red, sometimes green, but on black is not very often, because it makes sense. You get 3 things, you want to get immediate value, but I don't know, I kind of find the card interesting.
I enjoyed it.
So about this set, what do you think about it in standard or other kind of constructed formats outside of the cards we've already talked about and touched based on?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about Once Upon a Time. I think that's going to do a lot for Eternal play and for Modern, certainly.
Right.
There's just a lot of very interesting cards in this set, and as you said, the flavors very on point. I think that the way that they design this set, it does a lot for some of the existing archetypes, getting things like Murderous Rider that is a 2/3 lifelink with an attached kill a creature or planeswalker. I think that'll add something to the black mid-range decks. But there's also things that I think could create their own sort of archetypes, things like the Planeswalker Oko, the food tokens,
of course.
the troll. There's
a lot of different.
There's a lot of adventure cards I think you could do some sweet things with. A lot of the white adventures have some very interesting abilities. So
if you didn't know, the adventure mechanic is something new just to this set. It not a lot of cards have it. I want to say maybe 40 or so cards.
I think it's a fewer than that, but yeah.
So the mechanic is you have the card on the bottom where the text box would be is split into a little storybook. So you can take the adventure mechanic, which is usually an alternate cost, and you get some sort of ability.
It's an instant or sorcery you can cast from your hand.
And then whenever you cast it, that card goes into exile on an adventure, which is kind of cool. It is important though. It does not matter if it gets into exile in any other way, it is not on an adventure.
Correct.
You have to cast it for that adventure cost for it to be in there.
Yeah.
And when it's on an adventure, you can cast its other half, or
which is always a creature.
Half, and it comes back into play, and then you can go on from there, which is kind of interesting. They take a little quest, which is usually found on a scroll in the olden days, which is instant sorceries, and then you get a creature, which is I really, really like the mechanic. I like how on theme it is, and it really reminds me of Innistrad for some reason, but Innistrad was a beloved set in Magic, so I'm not going to fault them for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's going to be a good set overall. I'm looking forward to what it does for a lot of constructed formats, and I'm definitely going to try and get some drafts in of this set.
Oh, it should be definitely fun. The whole food. I just want to play with Gingy. I just want to play with Gingy.
All day, baby. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. Want to remind you that you can find us on Instagram and on Twitter at vault_mana, and you can find us here on YouTube. We'll be posting videos somewhat regularly.
Oh yeah, we'll try. We'll definitely try.
Yep. So you can find videos of us playing Modern. You're going to find some box openings here, and of course you'll find the podcast.
Yep.
And if there's anything else you want to see us do on this channel, let us know. Be sure you hit that like and subscribe button and
bell notification, and please leave a comment.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thank you very much. Want to let you know that the vault is now closed.